Oh, Immel. Hello. That's that was not a part of the pre-approved question list that I sent the Kbot, so I don't know if I can slip that in there. You never know, I didn't. Sometimes I like to talk about things not in the description. I don't know if that one's gonna make the cut. Thank you for the host, Kbot_273. Appreciate that. What was I doing? Is it gonna storm? Might. I have lost power before while running a tournament. If the stream just cuts off, it's because I lost power. But I don't think that's gonna happen. But every now and then we just lose. It's not gonna happen. The good Lord wouldn't do that to me on this day. Unless he does. Hello, carrots. Nice flannel? Well, thank you. My wife picked it out. I don't normally wear flannels, but my wife said I would look good in one, so we got one for me. Hello, Frosh Aloot. Awat. Hello. Been raining for the past 2 days. Those are just the tears from all the Chiefs fans that are upset that the Chiefs are under 500 5 games into the season. No rain till Thursday, except for today. It's just what the weather on the phone says. Okay. Topics for today. You literally just copy paste my tweet. Himmel, thank you. Can I pet Stuffle for you? I cannot, actually. I could if I would. Oh, you mean pat, not pet. I can't do that either. It's a shame. Thank you, Valorock. Yes, I'm aware that my hairline is strong enough to at least medal in a tournament. Apparently. Yeah, no, it's sad. The whole thing? I don't know. I sent Kbot a list of questions about a lot of different things. We'll see what he has to say. Who knows? As radiant as ever? Thank you. there's only one shade of radiance that my hairline can offer, and it is, I'm glad it's at least consistent. So welcome in, everybody. I missed the moo air sign. Nedernino. What makes this a holiday episode? It's Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a holiday. It's a national holiday. I got off work for it. For the first time ever, I have a paid holiday in October. I'm all for that. So it's a holiday. Would you think Santa Claus was going to make a guest appearance? Maybe I should do that for the Christmas episode of the Popcast. We'll bring in Santa Claus and get his thoughts on who's on the naughty list this year. Where's your day off? Weren't you off like all last week? Wednesday or Friday, Thanksgiving. Yeah, nice observance. A little, about a month late observing that. You're off some of last week. Maybe not intentionally. Put the Wiggly Phantoms on the naughty list? Probably. Watched the game last night. I don't have cable anymore, but I still follow every game as they're happening live. I'm just not watching them on like NBC or CBS as they're actually happening, but I am still keeping up with pretty much every single game that's happening. Missing NFL and college football is the only thing I really miss from not having cable, and we're like, well, we don't watch cable any other time, so why do we have this? It makes so there's ways around that. Wednesday for your birthday? Your birthday wasn't on Wednesday though. You lied to your employers. I'm telling you. Yahoo Sports? No. Do you follow that Highlights Heaven account on YouTube? Like they post, I don't know how they get away with it, but they post like highlights from NFL games that happened like 1 minute ago in real time. Like I don't know how they're allowed to post like NFL highlights that quickly. Like they must have some sort of contract with the NFL to be able to do that, but. Oh yeah, you can also listen to radio broadcasts of all this stuff. I do enjoy listening to radio stuff. Hence why the Popcast actually exists somewhat. I like to pretend it's a radio show. Amongst other things. That's the vibe I go for, Randy. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or a VOD, Twitch or YouTube, or Spotify. While you're dodging the Emmys in Metroid Dread, making Thanos memes in relation to the Arctic Moon situation from yesterday. Googling explain NFT like I'm 5 years old and still being confused about what an NFT is. Whatever it is that you're doing right now. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. Napster, how old are you, Stu? Oh, man, yesterday. Well, yesterday was something else, wasn't it? If you're tuning in thinking I'm going to talk about anything related to yesterday, other than what I just kind of made fun of in the intro there, I'm not. That's all. We'll just leave all of that at that. Very interesting day that yesterday was. But today is Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly Columbus Day, and it is however you celebrated today's holiday. I celebrated it by getting paid not to go to work. That's a pretty awesome way to celebrate it. Probably, my wife and I went out to lunch and we were talking about today, and she was like, well, yeah, it's a national holiday, but it's not like we're giving back the land or anything. So it's like, hey, it's a step in the right direction. Now we're at least recognizing that we stole land from people. And I guess nothing really is going to come of that. So there you go. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. News of tournaments that are coming up that may be of interest to the casual listener of the Popcast. First off, Low Inc. is next weekend, October 23rd and 24th, not this upcoming weekend, because King of the Castle is this upcoming weekend. Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, the traditional EU tournament that is at a time slot that benefits pretty much all regions outside of Japan. I think my body exploded there. Little Squidly 16 is not running this month. Instead, they're going to be back first thing next month, November the 6th. Already saw 3 teams have registered for that tournament that's going to be taking place less than a month from now, as we are inside about 25 days before that tournament. So if you missed Little Squidly, don't worry. It'll be back sooner rather than later. Don't know when the next Minnow Cup is, so that wasn't really announced yet. It seems like they're on a bi-weekly schedule. And, man, I feel like there were some other low-level tournaments. I just completely forgot about them. I miss Ash Cup. It'd be awesome if Ash Cup ever came back. That was a nice tournament that was right at the low ink skill level. That was a little bit different format, groups into top cut. I mean, not a crazy format no one's ever heard of, but at least different for low-level tournaments. Now LSL's kind of picked up the slack in that format, so it was nice to see. But regardless, Low Inks next weekend. Make sure you sign up for that sooner rather than later. Lady Remix, you picked the perfect time to raid, because I'm just going to tell you what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Launchpoint Draft Cup number 6 that took place yesterday, along with the 4 other tournaments that took place this last weekend: SOS, Paddling Pool, 4v4 Sundays, and Squid Junction. All of that in the weekly recap. So a lot of different tournaments and stuff to talk about today. But first, welcome into the Popcast. TO for notable tournaments such as Riptide, Inkstorm, the Nintendo Splatter Ladder tournaments, Tassel, well-known commentator and president of the Ohio State University Buckeye Gaming Collective, which was recently named a finalist for Esport Collegiate Program of the Year. Of course, I am talking about the one and only Kbot. How is morale in the Buckeye State today?
I mean, it feels like a Monday. I don't know what you're looking for here. And I also don't know why you went through the, expressing the whole finalist for the award thing. Like, that's all well and good. There's a lot of other folks that contribute to that as well. It's, it's not a me operation. It's an organization award.
Hey, I was just shouting
whatever.
out the Buckeye Gaming Collective, which I found out. I did my homework on you, Kbot, as this I didn't know anything about you going into this.
Right, yeah. I'm a pretty mysterious figure, honestly. I never really tweet much of anything. You don't really get to know who I am, not at all.
How was, Riptide ended recently. That was the most recent major thing that you were involved in. How did that go?
It went well. I mean, we talk this and that about the context surrounding Riptide, but I think for the event overall, my general perception of how it went was, I think people went to the event and had a good time there, which is obviously like the number one goal of any organizer, is you want to make sure that your attendees have a good time, right? And I think everything ran pretty smoothly for the most part. Didn't have any major hiccups along the way. And so, yeah, I think like with the way the event went on, that weekend, I think we were quite happy with how it was. And given everything that was coming in and out of that event.
What one of the topics leading up to the event was hey, there's a pandemic going on right now. How are we going to have a LAN in the middle of a pandemic? What do you view this now that Riptide's over and you might know, but I feel like there were only 3 confirmed cases, at least from the Splatoon side. Maybe there were more. Maybe there's just more that people weren't public about. But do you view Riptide as a success that kind of proves we can do lands in a pandemic era, or were there some things that you saw that were like, okay, maybe we should, maybe we just got lucky that things worked out the way they did, and we should wait a while before the next one?
I think there's a little bit of both. Like it's there is never a yes or no answer to these sorts of questions, right? There is never going to be, or at least for the foreseeable future, right? There's never going to be all right, we can just go back to whatever we were doing, right? I think that the Riptide team as a whole, for the 3,000 attendee perspective, we were quite happy with how things went overall. I think there was something like 5 or 6 total breakthrough cases. I think one of which did result in a hospitalization, but I believe that person is recovering. So from those perspectives, I think those are the kinds of numbers that you might normally or nominally expect, out of like a certain percentage of folks that are going to be there. Obviously, I'm not going to say that we want to try to make that number 0. But realistically, and that's one of the things that I tried to impress upon folks as they were signing up for the event was hey, if I come to this event, you're being exposed, right? Like you have to buy into just as much of the, protect yourself, wear a mask at all times, both inside the venue and outside the venue. And so, there's so much that we can control, and there's also a lot that we can't control at the same time. But overall, I think the Riptide team viewed the COVID protocols that were put in place as much more of a success. I think the additional space helped out, certainly. I will say that I think Splatoon had a little bit too much space at times. I don't envision that we're going to have like the exact same room layout anytime soon, right? But I will say, so I think we'll be able to kind of reduce that and reel that back in a little bit more. But I do think that keeping people spread out, keeping people conscious of what's going on, making sure that everyone's wearing masks and things like that did go a long way in terms of trying to mitigate, the pressure that we all felt with that. So I would say overall it was good. I would not recommend, we go do that like once a month. You know what I mean? But I think that over time, we're going to start seeing things return, a little bit more. We might be taking a little bit more of an extended break until the next land comes up. But, only time will tell when that's announced, what kinds of things will be in place for that event.
You mentioned one person was hospitalized. I did see that they tweeted out yesterday that person was now COVID free.
Yeah,
which was good to see. Just to clarify, you said 5 to 6 confirmed cases. That's just the Splatoon side and not the event altogether.
That is the event altogether.
Wow, really?
Yeah. There, to my knowledge. Now, again,
Right.
That is not to say other people maybe did or didn't tweet about it, or just we didn't tell one another in terms of Riptide staff overall. But to my knowledge, that 5 or 6 number is probably about for the event overall.
That's impressive,
Yeah,
honestly.
it is, right? So, that's, as, the Riptide folks were talking about that, it was like, all right, this feels overall like it was pretty good. We don't want to loosen things up for sure. But there might be things like, space considerations, because let's be real with ourselves. The unfortunate truth is that we do have to work on financial scales, right? And so the amount of space that was being hosted in some cases is simply inefficient, right? And so while we do want to try to ensure that there is plenty of room for folks to spread out and things like that, if we realize that folks are just kind of congregating together and they're comfortable with that, then that's the direction we're probably going to end up going, right? But of course, masks, temperature checks, I think are going to be like absolutely a necessity. At some point, there will probably be a full vaccination requirement on a lot of events. I don't know that for sure. And one of the other things too that's kind of interesting about like, and we might talk a little bit more about this as well, but one of the things to consider is, when we're talking about the kinds of lands that personally I've been involved with, they have always been alongside these much larger events, right? Like Splatoon is only 10%, if that, of this entire event, right? And so while we do have some control over what all is happening, we're also very conscious of the fact that we're part of something that's much larger, and it's this larger group of folks that are making the determination on what exact policies are going to be put in place.
Yeah, I think the only one that comes to mind that isn't connected to, like, it's just a standalone Splatoon LAN would be Beacon. And I know you weren't involved with that. I know that's what Game Set and Match was more with that. But I mean, I guess that's just kind of how Splatoon LANs need to be. Like, we kind of need to parasite off of something bigger just to kind of. But do you get the sense that like that Smash was kind of like happy to include us in some things? Like I did see some Smash players just kind of walking through the venue on the Splatoon side. I don't know if they were like looking for someone or if they were just checking the place out, but do you get the sense, at least from the Smash side, that they want to keep bringing some Splatoon back?
I mean, it depends on who you ask. I'm sure that like the average Smash Brothers enthusiast there at the tournament probably doesn't care much either way whether or not Splatoon is included. But I do think that there are a significant number of folks that are like kind of, being, like, hey, that's kind of cool. Splatoon's there. I know a handful of these Splatoon participants and some of the teams were consisting of folks that were playing in Smash Brothers and like thought Splatoon would be a cool side event for them as well. And so I think a lot of, those folks do exist, of course. And I think, if we're looking at just Nintendo games overall, it does feel like a natural fit, So I do get the impression that, there are a significant number of folks that enjoy us being around, for sure. And I think it kind of adds overall to these kinds of events, right? Especially like a Riptide. It just feels so right to have Splatoon there, I think, for a lot of folks.
So everyone wants to know when the next LAN is going to be, and I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you that question. But what I will say is it's almost like it's assumed that the next LAN is going to happen since Riptide did take place. But there's a lot of things that go into running a LAN that I think the general public doesn't really understand. A lot of logistics go into that. What do you, from your perspective, what do you think is the number one issue that comes up with running a LAN that most people might not think about?
I mean, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. Like one of them, of course, is these LANs in a lot of cases are planned for months upon months ahead of time, right? All of the coordination and talking about what the venue is going to look like, where the venue is, all of this stuff culminates eventually and does, build up to the event that you see on event day. But that's one of the things that I think goes slightly underappreciated is, of course, you see people like me running around pulling my hair out all weekend, but you don't see the, all of the hours that the entire team puts together leading into that event, whether that is, people like Devin that are sitting there making the broadcast package for the weekend, whether that is, me sitting down trying to make the map pool or take a look at what the map list looks like, bouncing those ideas off of other tournament organizers, the seeding process that we do go through from time to time, getting a bunch of other folks involved in that process as well. There are a lot of different things that need to be done in order for these LANs to be run. And it takes a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. It takes maybe a small group of folks coordinating and leading that charge, but it takes a lot of other experiences from other folks as well. And you see that represented on event day, right? With the amount of volunteers, the amount of commentators that we typically have over the course of the event. All of these people are necessary to run these kinds of events. And at the end of the day, it very much is something that the community has to invest in order to make these sorts of things happen, right? It's all on the community members to come out and volunteer their time and to be willing to learn the ropes and abide by whatever rules or restrictions that are put in place by the venue and things like that. So there are a lot of things that you have to consider when you're putting in to work at Atlanta. I will say things sometimes like I mentioned, working with we're a part of a larger event, and that's true, right? We have to make sure that we're being consistent in most cases with the larger Smash Brothers tournaments and things like that. We don't want to be saying something that's completely off base from what the larger event is saying, unless there are like specific things that particularly apply to Splatoon. And so that's also kind of something else to kind of consider is the interplay of how Splatoon at Riptide plays into the Riptide experience overall. So yeah, like there's a lot to consider in these sorts of events, and I think that's one of the things that everyone, like I said, most people appreciate the fact that they see me, they see Devin sitting back behind the computer all weekend. They see us there, but I don't think folks realize how much comes heading into that event as well.
Well, it's a lot more work that goes into a major, that's for sure. Even though majors are as a headache in their own kind of category, they're transitioning.
And you're transitioning. I want to answer this real quick.
Okay.
Garrett said when our top 8 photos, and Shara gave the carrot. I don't know when those are. I'm pretty sure I told you all that I don't know when they're coming out. They are coming out in an album from Riptide that there's one photographer they haven't released yet. I imagine it's coming out from a centralized Riptide like Twitter post, but they also obviously are just finishing up with Low Tide City. So we'll see. They're not going to be lost to the void, I hope. They're coming at some point.
That's what I like here on the Popcast. Breaking news. Now everyone knows the answer to when top 8 photos coming out is. We don't know.
How? Don't look at me. That's what I told top 3 payout. Is I was like, I am not the one paying this out. Do not ask me when you're getting your payouts because I do not know.
Fair enough. Super Jump.
Yes.
What were your thoughts on that? How'd you see Super Jump going?
I am glad to have seen someone and a group of people put together a successful large tournament, because that has not happened on a grassroots level since Inkstorm back in last August. So it was practically a year, right?
Yeah, about summer of last year.
Yeah. So it was practically a year that we haven't necessarily, or I guess there was Grand Grading Grounds too in February. I keep forgetting about that for some reason. But it has been a large number of months since there was like this large tournament that everyone in North America was excited for, that everyone in Europe was excited for, that everyone was looking towards in order to, really show their stuff. And I think the folks at IPL absolutely like put on the best show they could. And I hope that they have taken in a lot of the stuff that they've learned from doing an event like that to make the next one, even better put together and better, across the board. So, I am really happy to see its existence because I've been telling IPL to run a major for like 6 months at this point, right? And I know that there's also been a lot of prep time that's gone into this event specifically to making sure that they have everything, they're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. So I give an absolute round of applause to them as, someone who knows where all of that stuff is coming from, where all that goes, the kinds of reactions you get from folks overall. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a good event. I hope to see them do more of that in the future. Because I really do think that, I mean, at this point, they're the best group to do it. So they should absolutely keep continuing it.
One of the running themes, it seems, with Super Jump, Ink Storm, and I believe even Triple G is that every team that you actually know is just competing for second place to the team from Japan that just comes in and dominates everybody. Um, Now, to Starbird's credit, they did put up the best fight, and I feel like Starburst just kind of ran out of energy or steam or whatever when the Kings just kind of flipped the switch and just started dominating. I think they closed out 5 in a row against Starburst in that set, but nobody else could really touch that team, and it gives you the sense of like how far behind are we competitively from Japan? Do you think?
So that's a question that I don't know that I can like fully answer. I mean, I'm not as much of an analyst of this game as I once was. But like what I will say is that, I mean, you mentioned like the Starburst thing. I think in some respects, like one of the things that we don't talk about enough at the highest level, even, is mental game. I honestly think that a large part of what goes on for any given match between the top four teams in a tournament is a mental game, right? Uh, in some cases, like especially when it's like FT Win versus Starburst, right? Who's going to come out on top? It's probably going to be the team that can keep their focus together for every single game in that series, and it's going to be the team that doesn't beat themselves up over like a one particular the game loss that was caused by a single wipe because someone just was able to take over the game of the other team, you know. Um, and so I think like in the case of Starburst, like that was absolutely the case on that day. And when you're dealing with insanely mechanically gifted players that come from Japan to take over these tournaments, um, you have to be on your A game mentally at all times. And they can absolutely perform to the skill level of that pickup, but when their mental game is just not there because they're not used to being in those sorts of environments frequently. I mean, again, we were just talking about, there haven't been that many large pressure tournaments. There was Riptide 2 weeks before for them. But before that, when was the last time that Starburst had to sit down for grand finals and like face a team in 2 consecutive sets and like keep their focus on for that long? They're not used to that. And you cannot, there's literally no way to replicate that sort of a setting in a scrim. You can try to take it as serious as you want, but there's no way that you're going to actually be able to make that mentality like the same on tournament day of grand finals. I know the teams, you might be thinking about literally any amateur tournament, right? Low ink, you can never replicate low ink grand finals. The teams are almost there to winning low ink. They've gone all this way. And the atmosphere and the team communications is going to be so significantly different from what they're practicing in. And so I think in some respects, I haven't paid as close attention to the Japanese scene lately, but I would imagine that in a lot of these cases, with perhaps more frequent tournaments, they might be more tuned to that situation. In different kinds of play styles, they might be more tuned to, playing maybe it's just solo queue for them, basically. And they just are able to work together so well so that it doesn't look like solo queue because they understand what each of these players needs to do in their roles because they have more experience, because they've talked about it with the folks and those sorts of things. And then they're able to, keep that focus for that long of a period of time. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of factors in play. I don't necessarily know that like the skill level is lacking per se, right? Like especially taking the super jump data point where you're taking Starburst versus Kings. It probably wasn't necessarily a skill level matchup that was the decider. It was really about that mental game, I think.
Maybe you know the answer to this, or maybe you don't. Let me know. But one of the things that's kind of bled down from the top to, especially to +3 in the mid-level scene here, is doing splat zone only scrims. Do you know why? Did those originate to help like close the gap against Japan since they're so dominant at splat zones? Do you think?
Uh, okay, so this is probably a heated topic depending on who you talk to. I think that in some respects, yes, people were trying to be like, oh, well, they do it, so we should do it too. But I think that as an extension of that argument, people are looking at splat zones as arguably the most fundamental ranked mode, right? Because the objective is relatively easy to understand. It is stationary, it is static, and you can just go ahead and do that. Now, I think that Splat Zones is the most solo queue friendly mode. For that reason, where the objective is static, it is unchanging, it remains in the same spot on the map. You can go for the same stuff, you can try to mix it up a little bit, and you can kind of tell when you're going to want to go for a push, right? Like teams can kind of time that stuff up, even when they're not in VCs, because when you have that level of experience in a game, right? It's not about trying to get the quad. It's about pushing with your team with the objective, right? And so you're more easily able to do that in splat zones, which is why the argument was made that it is the most fundamental of modes, and it makes the most sense for people to practice on to try to develop those fundamentals.
That,
Now, or
well,
go ahead,
that
I
makes
guess.
sense because I agree. Splat zones is the most fundamentally sound, but if the idea is to help close the gap with Japan or to at least practice the same way they practice, if we're talking about our top teams beating them in tournaments, when it comes to the splat zone games, it's not even close. Like like those they're making our best teams look like they're not even on the same level as them in splat zones. And it's, well, okay, so we're not practicing tower control or rainmaker or clan blitz as much as we were. Now we're not gaining ground on them on the maps that you feel like we can actually beat them on.
Yeah, but I think like a large part of this too is it's about understanding what has to be done in a game. And I think that these Japanese players that one trick weapons in most cases have a very firm grasp on what their niche on their team is. And you don't need to tell them what their niche on their team is because they have that so ingrained in their play style because they've played the game for so long, because they're looking at the game in a different manner. And so I think that is fundamentally where, like as we were talking about a bit ago, that's fundamentally where, you know, some of these North American or European teams might be lacking a little bit more, is talking about, okay, what exactly is my role on this team? Because the NZAP's job is not to run around and get kills. And obviously that's the most self-explanatory example. But thinking about, okay, who am I pushing? Where am I pushing with them? And of course you can sit here and talk about it all that you want, and you can theorize all that you want about this stuff. But it's also different to perform on those things that you're sitting there and talking about, right? And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Can you perform under pressure? And in some cases, the answer is no, because these teams don't necessarily have that exposure to being in those pressured situations. So, like, I agree with you, right? That, okay, well, if we're trying to do this whole splat zones thing to look for, can we get to the same level as Japan? It certainly isn't going to work, and it certainly hasn't helped. But I think that's because that's less of like okay, let's start trying to like play only zones, and more of a, let's start talking about the way these things work, the way everything does and works together. Because I think that still in a lot of cases, folks don't fully understand, like, what does a 52 do? What does a 52 do that makes it so influential on the map? Because I see everyone complaining about it. But what's it supposed to do? It's probably supposed to be a Slayer that can just kind of slip around, sneak around, provide distractions, and do those sorts of things. So actually, if you know how to use the Kens 52's kit, you can actually be very impactful on the map. But you also need to make sure that you have folks that are worried more so about painting the zone. You have to make sure that there's someone watching the back line, watching flanks, things like that. In this sort of a meta right now. So I think, those are the sorts of things that people should be more focused on. And the fact of the matter is that, because we don't have a lot of these large tournaments that everyone wants to take super seriously, because most of the time people in the West only really come out for large prize pools. Whereas in Japan, that's not really particularly, prevalent. There's some level of discrepancy in terms of what makes a pressure-filled tournament and situation.
If you're just joining us, we are talking with Kbot, someone you've probably never heard of before
Never.
you turned in today. So nice little introduction to the world here.
77 episodes into the Popcast, by the way. Can we talk about that for a second?
What,
77 episodes,
this long, or
77 episodes, and this is the first one that you formally invited me to.
Yes. Oh, no. Hold on now. I did invite you to the one 2 episodes ago. You were just busy, so
okay,
you can't say
true.
You weren't invited.
Okay, but 75 episodes, so much better.
There we go. Hey, it takes a while. There's a lot of things to cover here. It's only recently that I'm actually talking about things not just consistent to low level.
That is true.
One of the things you talk about on a monthly basis, or at least you kind of give the data behind, is these plus servers. Particularly, you focus on the voting trends of that. The last time I was on Talk Speed Up, the show you formerly invited me on about a year ago. That was before +3 was a thing. And I remember mentioning the idea of +3 in a joking fashion that, like, what, are we going to see this next? And you were like, the last thing we need is a +3. Well, we're a year later and we have a +3. So what exactly is the purpose of these plus servers? Like, why were these plus servers invented in the beginning, like in the first place?
All right. So first of all, we should probably make the important distinction of I am not actually like running the plus servers, right?
Right.
That is not my job at all. I just kind of do the thing because the data is accessible to me, and like, you know what? Let's just see what's happening. I honestly wish I could spend more time, or I had more patience to go over and like come up with some more interesting things to look at. But I digress there for a moment, and maybe I'll get back into that. So +1 was the original server. It was only +1 back in the day, folks. I don't remember how long ago these things were made, like 4 years ago, maybe, or something like that. And the entire purpose of +1 was so that you could ping a server. If you, like, a certain person could ping a server and say, hey, I want +1 for this quad, or for pickup in this tournament, or we need a sub for our team for the day. And that person that they were looking for a sub for was going to be a high-level player that understood the game, and they didn't have to worry about randomly adding someone else to the team, right? Like, if you were playing with someone that you were pinging with, you would know who they were if you were a high-level team. So that was the original founding purpose of +1. Is that still doing its job? I don't really know. I would think it is to some extent, but I also think that over time that more of a communal aspect to it has vanished by the wayside, and now folks are more so looking for scrims out of that server, which I think is still valuable to be able to have those areas where people of like the highest echelon of the game can look for consistent ways to scrim one another. +2 comes along as the group of folks that are very close to being in +1, that also want some more representation, because the higher levels of the game, that is not necessarily the highest level. You're looking at your consistent top 8 finishers, you're looking for those sorts of things. They feel they're a little bit underrepresented, and they want somewhere to continue pushing in order to try to get better with one another, and things like that. Is that still doing its job? Probably overall, I think that +2 doesn't necessarily feed into +1 as much as folks might like. But the thing is that these things also, I could also sit here and talk about like a normal distribution. And if I had thought about it, I was even thinking about giving you a normal distribution and then zooming in, because the normal distribution, by the way, is all of the players in Splatoon, not the players in the competitive community, right? Let's be very clear on that. So when you're looking at the top 1% of players in X rank, then you're looking at a very, small select number of folks that are even in +1, right? So anyway, is +2 doing its job? Probably. Again, like I said, people get into +2 thinking that it could be a good avenue to get into +1, when in reality that probably shouldn't necessarily be the case. It should just be that you're, happy to be in the server where you can now kind of bounce ideas off of other folks, hopefully play with a few other folks, and things like that. And then there's +3, which is, again, the extension of the folks that are like mid to high level, still don't feel like they're really getting in. They want a piece of the pie too. And it's kind of a mess, to be honest, right? And I think in some respects, when you're starting to go further and further down, and one of the things that I've observed over time with the community at large is that things are becoming more factionalized because the community is growing larger. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's more so just the people that want to play together in certain friend groups are going to find each other in those friend groups before they go to the community at large, right? It's kind of like you want to sit by your own lunch table and you don't really want to move around to other lunch tables, and you don't really want to talk to anyone else at any of the other lunch tables. That's where we're going with this sort of a thing, right? And so when you're looking at +3, which is supposed to be larger than +2, there are supposed to be so many other folks that are happening there and so many other things. And they think that they can use this as an avenue to get into +2, and they can use this as their status symbol. I think it works less in principle, as one of the main reasons why I was kind of against it in the first place, because I don't think you're going to get anything that's super beneficial. Certainly, I don't think a +4 is going to be beneficial right at this point. But and it's not even necessarily about, as I think we'll get into in a second, it's not even about necessarily that like the server itself is designed to be volatile. That's just kind of the way it is, because people think they have different opinions of folks, and then they play with them, or then they don't play with them, and something happens.
I mean, it's definitely a club mentality kind of thing. Oh, well, I'm not allowed into that club. I'll just go make my own club. And, it's been about a year now. I feel like the dust has settled. We got Launchpoint, which I think is fantastic. Obviously, I'm going to talk about it later. Midpoint, you talked about you don't want a +4. I think Midpoint is seen as the spiritual +4 at this point, where before it was just the hodgepodge of what used to be, what is now +3 and whatever else. So I feel like the dust has settled to an extent. I don't think there shouldn't be a need for a +4 right
I'd
now.
hope not.
I mean, you've said it officially that you don't want a +4, so now I got that clip that I can reference when +4 eventually becomes a thing, because we know it will.
The year is 2077, and Sendo has now made a +35. However that bursty tweet goes.
That makes, that's if we're still playing Splatoon and I'm still alive by that time, I'd be welcoming plus whatever at that point. I'm just happy to be still a thing. +3, does +3 need to be bigger than +2 just to fit like the pyramid structure where there's more players at the bottom of it than at the top? I guess that's kind of the issue +3 is having now, because the more players you have in a specific server, the wider the skill gap is going to be. Like, that's just naturally going to exist. It's hard to find people that are close to your skill level and aren't total a-holes, and find like 100 to 200 of those kinds of people in this community. So, like, does it concern you that +3 isn't as big as +2? Or isn't, like, massively bigger than +2, like +2 is compared to +1?
I mean, it's hard because, like, I can't sit here and act like I know every single player in +2 or +3, or even know every single player in +1, by the way, right?
Well, you should. You're in +1. So.
Yeah, okay, well. And I still haven't actually, like, recorded any scrims from +1. But anyway, I also, like, intentionally don't vote, by the way. I have never voted since I was suggested a +2 because I'm like, okay, if I'm not playing, I shouldn't be the one, like, deciding or having an impact on who should be in and who should be out. So I don't vote, and that is intentional. That is indeed true that I am part of the statistic, part of the, like, 40-some% of +1 that doesn't vote. That is true. Yes, it is ironic. Anyway, so primary question, is it concerning that +3 isn't as large as +2? Or isn't significantly larger? And concerning, I don't know if it's the right word. Like I was saying, like, a normal distribution, technically speaking, consistently ramps up to some degree, right? You're going to have, if you're taking 3 slices out of the tail of a normal distribution, you're looking at, and they're three slices that are some value in, like, width, right? So each of these 3 slices have the same width. If you take each of those 3 widths of slices, the one that is going to be there is going to be a larger one, there's going to be a middle one, and there's going to be a smaller one. And that is how it's supposed to work. Now, you know, what I think the other thing that you're battling in +3 is people's perception of not only basically their own skill and how that relates to others. Because I think in +3, the problem is probably more like, I think I'm better than everyone in the server. And that is probably true for how 50% of people in the server think, right? They think they're better than everyone else. And so when they are going through the voting process, that makes it very difficult for things to start happening, right? When they're downvoting everyone because they think that they're worse than the voter, right? Then that's when you're starting to see these sorts of things. In +1, when you know everybody and you play with everybody, you have that semblance of, okay, I know this person is better than I am, and I know this person is worse than I am, but they're also not necessarily a, like, detriment to a team that I'm playing on with them, right? Because I think that's the level that you're looking at for +1. +3 doesn't really have that because everyone thinks they're better, right? And you can't have this world where everybody thinks they're better than their server, because otherwise everyone gets downvoted and you keep seeing what we're seeing. So it's kind of an interesting social experiment. And I, like I said, if I had more time, I wish I could go through and, like, actually see the process of, like, how voting has changed even in +3 over time. Because I think that'd be very interesting to do.
And is that why you're constantly coming out with the data that you see? I did find your tweet. It looks like 47% of +1 voted in the most recent one there. And to your credit, you're part of the 53 that didn't.
That is correct.
So, skewed data. To +3's credit, 77%. That's the highest percent of voting. And +3 did increase their numbers of 35 players over what they had last month. Of course, last month is when they had an identity crisis and committed a purge for their second time in just their short time of being in existence. But yeah, that's I think it's fair to say there is kind of a elitist mentality in some of these things. Well, I got the badge, like, I'm a part of the club, and anyone who's not a part of this club is inferior to me, kind of thing. Which, you know, that's human nature, as negative as it is, but.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I were to tell you, FT win with their actual full roster versus Starburst, they have a month to prepare against each other. What team are you putting your channel points on?
I don't pick favorites.
Uh-huh.
Popgun, what are you talking about here? I'm the one that's casting it and supposed to remain unbiased. Like, come on, man. What's up with that? So correct me if I'm wrong. FT Win, who is FT Win playing with during Super Jump?
Super
That
Jump,
was
every 2D instead of Bursty. Other than that's
June
their
instead of
normal roster. Shaq was in this time.
I mean, it's gonna depend. You know, how much is FT Win practicing heading into that event? How much can they reasonably practice? Because 3 of them at least now are in college and probably have other things to worry about. That's why Bursty couldn't do Super Jump, right? Because he was worried about other stuff, I would assume. And he couldn't practice as much heading into the event. So even if Bursty was playing, they probably would have had a very similar result because they just weren't able to play together. And that's exactly what I'm talking about earlier, by the way, right? What are these weapons niches? What are these players niches on this team, on this roster? Because that's going to change as the game continues to evolve. And that includes even while the game is evolving, while the patches are not coming out, right? That's what we saw with Kensa 52. The Kensa 52 wasn't suddenly buffed and everyone was like, oh yeah, that's a broken weapon, let's start using it. It took multiple months for people to start picking up that 52 and realizing that they could utilize this in a very unique playstyle. So it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't really matter what you're going into this with. What matters is how much these teams are practicing together, how confident they're feeling heading into this, what their mental is like heading into this. You know, all of these things add up. How focused is FT Win? I look at FT Win. They are notorious for dropping games to the winners bracket because they're not focused because they think they're invincible. They are notorious for that. If you go back and you look through all of FT Win's history and you go back through the winners brackets, you will find places where they lose games where they probably shouldn't because they're not on their A game. Their A game doesn't kick into the loser side. Their A game doesn't kick in until they actually know that they can lose this set. And even then, in some cases, it's too late. So, and Starburst is the same way. You know, they have a sort of a thing where, you know, they've got to be focused as well. And if they start beating themselves up over making mistakes, their mental and their gameplay is going to be affected because of it. So, you know, it depends on so many factors. You can never tell me that one of those two rosters is going to be on top all of the time. If like I couldn't even tell you what the hypothetical of both of these teams have been playing for a month consistently together and like this is what the result's going to be. I couldn't even tell you that because it's going to matter about what is actually the circumstances heading into the day of.
But you could at least acknowledge that for the first time in maybe 2 years, we can at least have a conversation about two teams at the top that can play against each other and are right with each other. Because for such a long time, it seemed like it was just FT Win and then whatever hodgepodge combination of players was going to try to beat them this time. And when they don't, okay, well, it's disband and try again. Starburst is finally the right formula. And now I'm excited about Jackpot. They seem to be an actual team again.
I hope Jackpot sticks together.
They played yesterday.
Together. They did. Okay, thank goodness. I really I was excited when that team was first announced. I said this on the Super Jump cast, I think. I was really excited when that team was first announced. And I was so sad to see them disband, and I am so happy they're back because I think that team has so much potential to just be an insanely good team. And again, it's going to take them consistently practicing, figuring out what their niches are, figuring out what their right picks are. And it's going to take a good day, you know? Like, it also does need to take a good day. You can't not factor that in.
Where can people find you since this is your debut to the world?
My debut to the world. You can find me on, most notably, I suppose you could find me on Twitter at Kbot_273. I tweet about a variety of things. You're probably going to see a lot of League of Legends Worlds tweets coming from me as, you know, that tournament is currently happening. I would recommend, by the way, that all of you watch other esports while you're looking at Splatoon. Even if you don't know everything that's happening in the game itself. I know the Overwatch League just wrapped up, but League of Legends Worlds is the largest League of Legends tournament of the year. It goes on for an entire month. where they broadcast every single game that gets played on this stage. The teams are all in Iceland right now. They're coming from all over the world to compete for the Summoners Cup. So I would encourage you all to go out and do that. I suppose if you really want to support the Buckeye Gaming Collective as finalists for this award, you can do so. The Twitter for that is at OSUBGC, and you can, I believe the tweet is pinned right now on that account for voting for that award. And I guess you can find me on Twitch. I don't stream a lot right now. There's just so much going on that I have to deal with and work with. But you can also find me on Twitch at Kbot_273. Popcast, appreciate you having me on. You're getting me done and out of the way so you can go on to ramble about Launchpoint and your hairline. So have fun with that.
I never miss an opportunity to talk about my lack of hair, Kbot. It's my one defining feature.
Haha, everyone laugh at him. He's bald.
That was Kbot joining us on the Popcast. Very good interview, very informative. Love talking to people who are deeply involved in the scene and have a lot of good information to share. That was just as informative for me as it was for probably a lot of you people in chat. So I was glad to have Kbot on. There was a lot of questions that I wanted to talk about, and it was good listening to that stuff. So very nice, nicely done there, Kbot. We still got a lot of stuff to cover. It is getting darker and darker outside as the clouds are rolling in. So hopefully we can get this episode done before the end of whatever that darkness outside is going to produce in a few seconds. So moving right along, let's roll right into it. It is time for the weekly recap.
Missiles with Luke on this paint shot, but getting shut down instantly by that bamboo, and 2 down on the side of Memory, 3 down on the side of Memory, and that's going to be the game for Summit. First game Memory loses this entire tournament. Missiles with Luke.
And that would be the only game Memory would lose in that entire tournament. Of course, I'm talking about SOS number 44. That was Leo Tos and myself on the call for that IPL event that happened last Wednesday. Memory taking the entire tournament peaking over Summit 4-1 in grand finals. So that one, Memory going 19-1 in this entire tournament. The roster for this Memory team, we're going to be talking about Memory again, if memory serves me right. Rhythm, Luke, Neutral Face, which is Vortex, but when they have the IGN of Neutral Face, I'm just going to read what the IGN actually is, even if I know who the actual player is, because that's clearly what they want to be identified as. So, Neutral Face and Bandit. Memory winning this tournament third place went to, not Tukey, but the usual pickup team that plays in this tournament, Violet, Radia, and some other players that escape me. My memory is fading. Tukey taking fourth place. The name of the pickup team this time around was This Pleases the Mouse, which I'm pretty sure is a reference to Sora being in Smash Brothers or something like that. Hammerhead was won by Mako Bracket won by Taco Gaming, which is basically just a twice pickup from what I could see. And Lantern Bracket got turned into a group stage, which turned into one of those circle of sucks that we see in pretty much every single LSL. Hydra, Aquatic Vanguard, and TBDs all went 2-1 because they got one win from a bye and took one win from each other. I guess you could say it was a 3-way tie for who won Lantern Bracket, but I think the tiebreaker went to Hydra for some reason. Who knows? Paddling Pool 132. Broccoli IP took first place. That is IPS J Isabel Pikmin X, I believe, and Nepia, who played for that team. Second place went to Woomy United Today, Jess, Lewis, Soren, and Thunder. And the Sentinels, an actual team. a alpha bracket contender in Low Ink. The Sentinels took third place in Paddling Pool 132. Squid Junction 11 took place most recently last Saturday. A big glow-up tournament for Squid Junction, as this was a maxed-out tournament for them. They closed registration early on Saturday as they reached 32 teams. Can you hear that? That is looking nasty outside, not gonna lie. Memory won this tournament as well. The only difference is Bandit didn't play. Instead, Nova did for this version of Memory. In fact, Bandit was on the team opposite of them in Grand Finals that took second place. Nerf 52, made up of Bandit, Nick, Oscar, Taylor, and Kento. Rising Matrix, back from like the 20th tournament they played in since they've disbanded for the 21st time, took third place here. 32 teams signed up for this double elimination tournament, the biggest one yet, but no team had a bigger Squid Junction than Sirius, who absolutely popped off in this one, beating Drunk on Friday, which was basically a luau pickup, Azult and Synergy, as well as beating another pickup team that I believe had Pez Pop and other players I can't think of off the top of my head, but it was like a +3 level team that they beat as well. So Sirius is kind of showing here that they're beyond what they were back when they were finishing in second place in Low Ink. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, or last week, when they won the Minnow Cup tournament, Sirius taking a step up above what we've consistently seen them as. I see you, Sirius. You guys starting to pop off. Yesterday, 4v4 Sundays. First place went to a team name that I cannot pronounce, so I'm just going to tell you the players that were on it. Kiver, Kyo, Zeres, and Obito. Yeah, that explains why that team won. Wow, can you calm down? Can you guys hear that? For real? Wow. It's not supposed to be that dark at 7 o'clock today. Anyways, second place went to World Domination, or Jackpot. Literally, the Jackpot Twitter tweeted out that they were World Domination. Why'd they change their team's name? I have no idea. We have enough issues with players playing with their actual names. Now we have teams playing with some completely different names as well. It's something else. You can hear it. Awesome. Cool. Remember that at my funeral. Third place went to Arctic Moon. So there you go. 4v4 Sundays continually getting a healthy number of high-level competitive players coming out and playing in their tournaments. Even though they're not getting a crazy amount of teams as we're seeing in Squid Junction or SOS, the quality of players that are playing in these tournaments is pretty significant. So 4v4 Sundays, like the premier high-level tournament. NFL action, the Chiefs got rocked by the Bills 38-20 last night. Rams bounced back against the Seahawks 26-17 on Thursday night. And that was your weekly recap. Sponsored by all of the talented artists that we have in this community that are not scammers. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Look, I didn't call anybody out by name. I didn't mention anything. I could be talking about anything. That could be a reference to absolutely anything. You guys can't bring it on me. So don't. Just shout out, giving some love to artists. We love artists here on the Popcast and in the entire community. Moving right along to the real reason you guys are all here. The Launchpoint Draft Cup happened yesterday. Launchpoint Draft Cup number 6. And we are going to scoot right on into it. Of course, there is no way we can talk about a Draft Cup tournament without referencing the horribly stupid pickup team names that you idiots in chat come up with on a monthly basis. I've seen them all. And I don't have a top 10 because I don't think there were 10. How many do I have here? I think I had about 9. And they're not in any particular order except for my particular favorite one overall. But we're going to highlight a couple of these. First off, shout out to my wife. Miss Pun Gun strikes again. I was confused about this but it turns out this team didn't give a name at all. And Launchpoint Draft Cup staff says that when you don't enter a name, my wife gets to pick it. So Miss Pun Gun Strikes Again was the name of one of those teams. Congratulations. Why couldn't you come up with a name, I wonder? Was it that bad? We Will Rock You is what opponents said to this team. They went 1-4. A very aggressive name. Didn't really back it up, but fair enough. Critical Sussy Baka. So there you go. I've officially said those words out loud. So now when Jub does her next remix or takes sound bites of things I say and puts them out of order, those words are now floating around to be used. And I'm just absolutely thrilled about that. C++. SEA being the C there and plus being plus. Fun fact. In high school, I actually took some programming classes and started off college as a computer science major. That would be in C++. So I started off my junior year learning QBasic, which I don't think there's computers that are old enough anymore that can still run something like that. You had to load it from DOS. But my senior year, we used C++, so I actually know a little bit of C++. So I understand the reference of C++ here. And there's no way I remember any of that stuff, though. But I did steal my textbook, so I could look it up if I needed to. Sad Buoy Hours. Not Sad Boy Hours, but Sad Buoy Hours. The wife liked that team name, so it found a way to make itself into this list here. A Pan, the initials of the teams, which is always a simple thing to do if you can't come up with a clever team name. Well, let's just take the first letter of every player on this team and try to make a word out of it. The word they came up with was A Pan. Okay, I'll get the job there. Disgruntled, elegant, effortless, zealous knots, or if you want to be more technical about it, it's D's knots. So there you go, man. I'm just setting myself up for failure by saying these things. To D's knots credit, they did at one point on stream use triple Nautilus, including the vanilla one, with Point Sensor and Baller. So they at least lived up to their namesake. They did use Nautilus, and D's were them. Let's get this out of the way. Pop Gun's hairline. Now, if you remember the last Launchpoint Draft Cup, there was a team called Pop Gun's Twitch Passcode, and they did not do so well. Oddly, since Twitter got hacked last week, I had to change my passcode on Twitch to something more stronger. I'm sure pretty much every one of you did in chat, and if you haven't, you should go do that as soon as this stream ends, pretty soon. So at least I know that my hairline is is stronger than my own Twitch passcode, because this team ended up finishing in third place. Way to go. You hanged in there just long enough for something. The official favorite team name goes out to the team that finished in second place of the entire tournament. Oddly enough, Shimp. SHIMP. What is a Shimp? Well, Google says it's a suppression head impulse test. Okay. Urban Dictionary calls it a she pimp. It also showed up images of shrimp. So any of those things sounds cool, I guess. I don't know what a suppression head impulse test is. It sounds pretty aggressive, but I'm sure it's used for something positive. And, of course, my wife was a big fan of this team. You could say that she simped for Shimp. So there you go. That is your official Popcast team name of the tournament. The tournament itself, though, 6.5 hours as far as the stream is concerned. Fair enough. A little bit of a lengthy tournament, but there's been longer ones for the Launchpoint Draft Cut. At least the format is fine. maybe too many teams went on the top cut, but here's what I love about this format, and I think we're going to take a look at this format right now. If I fix this overlay, I did. 3 groups of 6 teams all played in this tournament. And that is what you'd like to see. I'd like to see, when you have these draft cups, that every team has the opportunity to play a healthy number of games. I feel like the All-Star Tournament SAC did last season captured that perfectly, having 2 groups. Everybody played in just those 2 groups, and like the top 2 team moved on to a top 4 top cut, which is great. Have everybody play a lot of games, and then just have your grand finals be just a handful of teams and just get it out of the way. These tournaments aren't meant to be massive, let's find and develop the true winner of this tournament. It's just meant to be, get to meet the other teams, other players on your team, play against some other teams, just get some experience, have fun, adapt a little bit, and maybe figure out, you learned some things competitively that help you going forward. So it's good to see that everyone played at least 5 games here. And also, I did see that there were 20 players that dropped, and that was very concerning. So it looked like there were a lot of last-minute scrambling to make sure that every team had at least 4 players that could play in this tournament. And so hats off to Launchpoint Draft Cup staff for being able to handle all of that and get it done in an appropriate fashion. Maybe that's what caused the tournament to drag on a little bit. As you can see, whoever put these teams together did a pretty good job. This was the only team that went undefeated in groups, and I believe they lost in round 1. Everybody else, round 1 of top cut. Everybody else was still pretty much dead even with each other. Nobody went 0-5, so everyone got at least 1 win. And a couple of these groups went 4-1, had a couple of tiebreakers going out here. This team, the team that ended up winning the whole tournament, left profile pick supremacy, actually lost to Stupid But Cool, this team that didn't even make top cut. Lost to them 1-3, I believe, or 2-1. Yeah, 2-1. So good parity. You like to see that. That is a sign of people doing a good job of putting players together in their teams. Putting these teams together, which is very difficult to do. It's hard not to make a super team, and it's hard not to make a team that's absolutely going to get destroyed by multiple players. Miss Pup Gun getting strikes again, unfortunately not being as strong as my hairline, but not everything can be, unfortunately. I guess that's really all I have to say about the group stage here. Let's see. We're looking at the top cut, the final stage here. As you can see, the top 3 from each group moved on. Best of 5 brackets. Looked like everything was kind of a curb stomp here until semifinals where things kind of simmered down here. I'm kind of surprised this was a 4-0. I didn't look at this one specifically, but you just kind of see how close these 2 teams were altogether. And I guess, Simp ended up in this tiebreaker play-in game. How did they do in group stage? Did they finish near the bottom? They did. Went 3-2. Lost to my hairline, get owned, and the team that ended up winning. So they took a game off of this team earlier and then just couldn't really get the job, couldn't really hang with them in grand finals there. So fair enough. But still, the teams that finished in top 4, my wife, who commentated the early portion of this tournament, actually, and this is good, a lot of you young up-and-coming commentators should probably do something similar to this when you know the teams that are playing in your tournament. She went through it and made notes, and this isn't going to look good on the camera, but there it is, made notes for literally every single team that played in this tournament, so that as she commentated them, she had something to look at and talk about, instead of what happens a lot is, so Tommy, what do you know about these teams? And Tommy's just like, I don't know anything about these teams. Why did you ask me? You just set me up to look like a jackass on stream. But no, if somebody were like, so Miss Popgun, what do you know about these teams? She needs to be like, well, here's all the information about every single one of them. Now, again, I keep talking about I need to make a beginner's intro to commentary. And apparently covering pronouns is another thing we should be talking about too, because I saw a lot of people bringing that up in the feedback channel, how people were constantly referred to as he, him instead of them, they. That's something it took me a while to kind of master that, because you so instinctually want to say he, him. But I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of they, them, everybody, unless I know their actual pronouns. It's just something that comes with experience, but I'm glad people in feedback channel pointed that out, because that is a fair thing to call out commentators for, because somebody called me out for it when I started doing low ink, and I didn't recognize it until someone called me out. It makes you better. Regardless, the whole point, for those 4 teams, I'm using my wife's notes here. So it kind of doubles going both ways here. The team that finished in 4th place, Barbed Wire, was made up of Slayer from Legato, Murphy from Neo Palm Tree, Lost, and Random Flux. Radon Flux, who I believe are either free agents or no team information could be found about those players specifically. I feel like Lost is somebody who's not the Carbon Lost, but the Lost who's consistently in these low-level tournaments. I feel like I should know what team I've seen them on recently, but they've been pretty active. But that was Team Barbed Wire, team that finished in 3rd place. The Pop Guns hairline. Garrett from Up the Ante. Valorok from Ocean 7. That explains why Valorok was constantly chanting hairline. Roomba and Rush. Rush was this Outkit? I don't know. I feel like Rush and Roomba might be free agents. But still, Up the Ante, Ocean 7. Pop Guns hairline looking pretty strong there. It's a good roster there. I wonder if Garrett used Squiffer the entire time. Probably did. Rush using the NZAP, so that probably left Valorok and Roomba to do some slayering there. Got the job done, finishing in 3rd place. Attaboy. 2nd place team, Shimp. The players that made up this one are AESA. They're from Illumini. That I know. Corona Bear, that person is a free agent. I've seen them in the Sindao free agent list. Pixel, who should be in chat, or I think yeah, there you are. I see you. From Ocean 7, an Air Sign from Ink or Swim, the team that finished in 2nd place. But unfortunately, 2nd place, that means you were the first losers of this tournament. Congratulations, because now we're going to be talking about the team that won it all, sweetheart, and that would be Left PFP Supremacy. What am I missing here? What is a left profile pick? What is the reference to that? I don't really. Maybe that's one of the few things I feel like I should have understood, but flat out didn't. Oh my gosh, it's not Jordan. YAN. I never really figured out how to pronounce your name, who just Jorian number 2. But I know you're from Outcast Ninjas. Have been on Outcast Ninjas for a long time. Played with Leaf from Blue Moon. Good to see Blue Moon be strong represented here. Blue Moon, I talked about them recently for their performance in one of these tournaments on the Popcast. We're keeping our eyes on Blue Moon. Zeno Cakes. The note here says Zodiac with a question mark. Is that the team's name, or they just do we just not question where Zodiac is from? In Lycan, who I most recently said on the podcast that they were from Lost Inklings. That is where I know Lycan from, but Lycan is not on Lost Inklings anymore. Also formerly from Trilite Anglers, but DM'd me today to clarify Lycan is currently a free agent. So if you're looking for a brush player that has won a Draft Cup tournament such as this one, a very good brush player at that, feel free to reach out to Lycan. Or don't. Either way. Regardless, those are the team players that finished in the top 4 of Launchpoint Draft Cup number 6. You'll love to see it. You'll love to see this tournament still be a thing. It seems to be like it seems to be kind of like a bi-monthly or a quarterly kind of thing. It's good to see it running consistently. If you remember when I was talking with Kbot, I kind of mentioned Launchpoint as being a good thing. I feel like Launchpoint does a good job as far as all these like plus servers are kind of concerned. It's not really a plus server, but it's like a spiritual low-level plus server. I feel like Launchpoint's been doing a good job. The Launchpoint community is pretty strong. My wife was a big fan of it back when she was allowed in Launchpoint before she graduated. So hats off, Launchpoint. You guys are doing a good job. But not as good as my hairline, apparently. And that's going to do it. Let's not risk this anymore. I still have power, so let's end this stream now before anything crazy happens. So thank you all for watching today's episode of the Popcast. If you would like to be a part of the Popcast in any way, maybe you want to send me some information about where you are currently are. If you want to, don't DM me GGs, and don't DM me if you're banned from Low Inc. Those are going to either not get a response from me or a disgruntled grumble response from me. Do not get grumble, angy pop gun responses from me. That should be your goal in life. Feel free to reach out to me at the followers below, or my socials below. Twitter at Mr_Popgun, Discord Popgun, #5882, YouTube at 25Popgun, Twitch at Popgun25, Anchor.fm/Popgun. We are going to raid Rafa KP. That's a safe raid. And thank you for the raid, Boss Tyrant. You came to everyone just now signing in. Check the VOD on YouTube or Twitch. You just missed the Popcast. And thank you for the follow. You say hi to Rafa. Get out of here. Go enjoy your Mondays. If you're in the same area I am, maybe take cover too. It's looking nasty out there.